Joseph was the beloved son of Jacob, born to him in his old age through Rachel, the wife he loved most dearly. From his earliest days, Joseph's life bore the marks of favor and promise. Jacob, whose name God had changed to Israel, looked upon Joseph with tender affection, treasuring him as a precious gift. To show his special love, Jacob gave Joseph a coat of many colors, a garment unlike any other, woven with care, radiant in its hues. It was a sign to all the household that Joseph held a place of honor in his father's heart, but the gift stirred envy. His brothers, the sons of Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, looked upon Joseph with disdain. They saw the coat as a reminder of their father's favoritism, a visible mark that set Joseph apart from them. Their hearts grew restless with jealousy, and, though they shared the same blood, bitterness began to root itself in their souls. Joseph, however, was innocent in his youth. His heart was pure, and he often accompanied his brothers in the fields where they tended their flocks. Yet when Joseph saw his brothers acting in ways that displeased their father, he brought back an honest report. This too fueled their resentment, for they saw him as both favored and critical, beloved yet judgmental. In the quiet of the night, God began to speak to Joseph through dreams. One evening, Joseph dreamt that he and his brothers were binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly, his sheaf rose and stood upright, and their sheaves gathered around, bowing before his. When Joseph shared this dream with his brothers, their anger grew hotter. They said, "Will you indeed reign over us? Shall you truly rule over us?" Their words were sharp, their eyes filled with scorn. Yet another dream came. This time Joseph saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing before him. When he told his father and brothers, even Jacob was astonished. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" Jacob pondered the matter, though his heart was unsettled. His brothers, consumed with jealousy, could no longer speak kindly to him. Still, God was at work, shaping Joseph for a destiny beyond his youthful understanding. Each dream was a whisper of things to come, a divine glimpse into the path that awaited him. Though Joseph was yet a boy, heaven was preparing him for trials and greatness alike. Time passed, and Joseph continued to grow in wisdom and stature. His father's love for him did not wane, nor did his brothers' hatred soften. Whenever Joseph walked among them, they turned away with cold glances, their hearts nursing silent plots. Yet Joseph's eyes looked beyond them, as though drawn by visions of a future not yet revealed. It came to pass that Jacob sent Joseph to his brothers as they pastured their flocks near Shechem. "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring me word," Jacob said. Joseph, obedient as ever, set out on the journey. He wandered through the fields until a man found him and directed him toward Dothan, where his brothers had gone. When his brothers saw him approaching from afar, his coat of many colors shining under the sun, their hearts burned within them. They conspired among themselves, saying, "Behold, here comes the dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into a pit. We will say that a wild beast has devoured him, and then we shall see what becomes of his dreams." Thus, Joseph's story, born in love and adorned with dreams, was about to descend into the valley of betrayal. Yet even in the shadows of envy and malice, God's hand was guiding the steps of his servant, preparing him for the great work that lay ahead. As Joseph drew near, his brothers' whispering turned to hardened resolve. Their hearts, once bound by the love of family, had become corrupted by envy and resentment. The sight of Joseph's colorful coat, his father's gift, and their constant reminder of favoritism fueled their fury until it boiled over. Reuben, the eldest, though burdened by the same jealousy, sought to temper their rage. "Let us not take his life," he pleaded. "Shed no blood. Cast him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand upon him." His words were meant to deliver Joseph later and restore him to his father, for though Reuben wrestled with his own failings, he feared the weight of blood guilt. The brothers agreed. When Joseph reached them smiling with the innocence of youth, they stripped him of his coat, the robe of many colors that marked him as the chosen one, and with rough hands they cast him into an empty cistern. The pit was dry, without water, cold and harsh. Alone in the darkness, Joseph trembled, his cries echoing against the stone walls. But his brothers turned away their ears. As they sat to eat their meal, a caravan appeared on the horizon. Ishmaelites, journeying from Gilead, their camels laden with spices, balm, and myrrh, on their way to Egypt. Judah, ever calculating, saw in this moment an opportunity. "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" he said. "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." The others agreed, their greed mingling with their envy. So they drew Joseph up from the pit. His pleas for mercy fell on hearts hardened with malice. They exchanged him for 20 pieces of silver, a meager sum for a life, and handed him over to strangers who bound him and led him away. The boy who once dreamed of greatness was now a slave, walking the dusty road to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and found it empty, he tore his clothes in anguish. "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" he cried. His plan to secretly restore Joseph to Jacob had failed, and despair fell upon him. To cover their deed, the brothers slaughtered a young goat and dipped Joseph's coat in its blood. They carried the garment to their father and said, "This we have found. See now whether it is your son's robe or not." Jacob recognized it and broke into grief, his cries piercing the camp. "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothes, wrapped himself in sackcloth, and mourned for many days. His sons and daughters rose to comfort him, but he refused to be consoled. "I shall go down to the grave mourning my son," he said, weeping bitterly. His heart, pierced by sorrow, could not imagine the truth, that Joseph yet lived, carried away to a foreign land where God's purposes would unfold. Meanwhile, the Ishmaelites brought Joseph into Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Though Joseph's world had been shattered, torn from his family, betrayed by his brothers, stripped of honor, he was not abandoned. The Lord's hand was upon him, even in bondage, guiding him through the valley of suffering toward the destiny promised in dreams. Thus, the dreams Joseph once shared with youthful innocence seemed shattered by betrayal, but they were not lost. The pit, the chains, the silver, the tears of a grieving father, all were threads in a tapestry unseen, for the God who had spoken through visions was faithful, and his plan would not fail. Joseph was brought down into Egypt, the land of pyramids, temples, and mighty pharaohs. The sun blazed upon the sands, the Nile flowed with life-giving water, and the bustling markets of the empire overflowed with spices, linen, gold, and the sound of countless tongues. For Joseph, it was a land both wondrous and terrifying, for he had entered it not as a free man, but as a slave. The Ishmaelites, having profited from his sale, delivered him into the hands of Potiphar, captain of the guard and officer of Pharaoh. Potiphar was a man of authority, accustomed to discipline, loyalty, and obedience. He purchased Joseph for his household, expecting nothing more than the labor of another servant. Yet God's providence had ordained otherwise. From the very beginning, the Lord's presence was with Joseph. Though stripped of freedom, Joseph carried within him an unshakable faith. He remembered the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his forefathers, and he trusted that the God of his fathers had not forsaken him. He prayed in the silence of the night, whispering words of hope, even as the chains of bondage pressed against his spirit. Potiphar soon saw that Joseph was no ordinary servant. Whatever task was entrusted to him, Joseph did with diligence and skill. Whether managing the storerooms, organizing the fields, or overseeing other slaves, Joseph worked with integrity and wisdom. More than this, everything Joseph touched seemed to prosper. Harvests yielded abundantly, household affairs ran smoothly, and peace dwelt where once there had been strife. Potiphar, discerning these blessings, recognized that the hand of a higher power rested upon the young Hebrew. He entrusted Joseph with increasing responsibility, testing him with greater tasks. Each time, Joseph proved faithful, honest, and capable. At last, Potiphar placed him over his entire household, making him steward of all his possessions. None in the house held greater authority, except Potiphar himself. The scriptures declare, from the time that he made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. Thus even an Egyptian master, though a worshipper of foreign gods, became a beneficiary of the covenant blessings that flowed through Joseph. Joseph, though exalted within the house of his master, remained humble. He clothed himself not only in fine linen given to him, but in virtue, self-control, and reverence toward God. He governed with fairness, treated servants with compassion, and guarded Potiphar's resources as if they were his own. In all these things Joseph's character shone brightly, yet prosperity often draws trials, and those who walk uprightly are not spared the snares of temptation. Joseph was a young man, strong and handsome in appearance, his face radiant with health, his stature noble, his manner graceful. Potiphar's wife, a woman of wealth and beauty, noticed him. At first her glances were fleeting, concealed behind veils of propriety, but desire kindled in her heart, and soon the fire of passion consumed her thoughts. Day after day she sought his presence. With enticing words she whispered, "Lie with me." But Joseph, firm in his integrity, refused. "Behold, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. He has committed all that he has to my care. There is none greater in this house than I. Neither has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" His answer revealed not only loyalty to Potiphar, but a deeper reverence for God. Joseph's fear of the Lord outweighed the allure of forbidden pleasure. His faithfulness was not merely the restraint of desire, but the triumph of devotion. Still, she persisted. Each day she tried to sway him, but Joseph would not yield. He avoided her presence, keeping himself occupied with duties, choosing solitude rather than the company of temptation. Yet temptation, like a hunter, waits for the moment of weakness. One day, when none of the men of the house were inside, Potiphar's wife caught Joseph by his garment. Her grip was firm, her voice urgent, "Lie with me." At that instant, Joseph tore himself away, leaving his garment in her hands, and fled outside. His choice was clear. Better to lose a cloak than to lose purity. Better to be shamed before men than to sin before God. Humiliated by rejection, her desire turned to rage. With Joseph's garment in her hand, she cried out to the servants, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to mock us. He came in to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice." She twisted truth into deceit, her voice filled with false indignation. When her husband returned, she repeated her accusation. "The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came to mock me. But as I lifted my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled." Potiphar's anger burned. Whether he fully believed his wife or not, the shame of the accusation demanded action. He cast Joseph into the prison where the king's prisoners were bound. Thus Joseph, who had risen from slave to master's steward, fell again into chains. Yet even in prison, the Lord was with Joseph. The walls of confinement could not bind God's favor. The keeper of the prison soon noticed Joseph's character, just as Potiphar had. Trust was placed in him, responsibilities were given, and once more, whatever Joseph did, the Lord made it succeed. In the silence of the prison, Joseph's spirit might have faltered, yet he held fast to his faith. Though unjustly accused, though robbed of freedom, he did not curse his lot nor turn his heart to bitterness. He knew that the God who had once spoken through dreams had not forgotten him. His life, though marked by betrayal and injustice, was still in the hands of the Almighty, and so Joseph's journey deepened. From favored son to slave, from steward to prisoner, he descended into the shadows. But each step downward was, in truth, a step forward in the mysterious plan of God. For the one who allows trials also ordains triumph, and Joseph's story was far from over. The prison into which Joseph was cast was a place of shadows, where iron bars held men who had fallen from the heights of Pharaoh's favor. The air was heavy with despair. The cries of the guilty mingled with the silence of the forgotten. Yet even there, where most would wither, Joseph lived with a quiet strength. The keeper of the prison, hardened by years of watching men rot in chains, saw something different in this Hebrew youth. Joseph did not curse, nor did he plot revenge. His hands were steady, his words kind, his spirit unbroken. Soon the keeper entrusted him with responsibilities, overseeing other prisoners, managing the daily order, tending to those who suffered. Just as in Potiphar's house, whatever Joseph touched prospered, for the Lord's favor was with him. Among the prisoners were two men who had once served Pharaoh closely, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. Both had offended their master, and in Pharaoh's wrath they were cast into the same prison where Joseph was confined. Their fall from honor was great, for these were men of trust, the cupbearer who once placed the king's wine into his hand, and the baker who prepared delicacies for the royal table. Now they sat in darkness, stripped of dignity, uncertain of their fate. Joseph, charged with attending to them, served them with diligence. Though they bore the weight of disgrace, he treated them with respect, for he remembered always that all men stand equal before God. One night, both the cupbearer and the baker dreamed dreams, each according to its own meaning. In the morning their faces were troubled, their eyes heavy with fear. Joseph, entering their chamber, noticed their sorrow. "Why do you look so sad today?" he asked gently. They answered, "We have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Joseph replied with quiet confidence, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, I pray you." The chief cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream," he said, "behold, there was a vine before me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand." Joseph listened intently, then answered, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days Pharaoh shall lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall once again place Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when you were his cupbearer. But remember me when it is well with you, and show kindness to me. Mention me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing deserving of this dungeon." The cupbearer's heart leapt with hope at these words. Then the chief baker, encouraged by the favorable interpretation, spoke as well. "I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 baskets of white bread upon my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." Joseph's face grew solemn. "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days Pharaoh shall lift up your head from you, and shall hang you on a tree, and the birds shall eat your flesh from off you. The Words fell heavy upon the baker, whose countenance darkened with dread. And it came to pass on the 3rd day, Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker before them all. He restored the chief cupbearer to his office again, and he placed the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But the chief baker he hanged, just as Joseph had said in his interpretation. Yet the chief cupbearer, once restored to honor, forgot Joseph. He returned to the glittering halls of Pharaoh's palace, the noise of celebration drowning the memory of the youth who had spoken truth in the prison. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and Joseph remained behind bars, still waiting, still forgotten by men, but never forsaken by God. In those long days of waiting, Joseph's heart was tested. Each morning, the light of the sun fell upon the iron bars, and each night silence pressed upon his soul. He could have surrendered to despair, believing himself abandoned. Yet Joseph remembered the dreams of his youth, the sheaves bowing, the stars bending, and though they seemed distant, he trusted that the God who gave the vision would also bring it to pass. Thus Joseph endured. His patience became strength, his faith a fortress. Though the world had forgotten him, heaven had not, for the time was drawing near when Pharaoh himself would dream dreams that none in Egypt could interpret, and the name of Joseph would be remembered. 2 full years passed. After the restoration of Pharaoh's cupbearer, 2 years of waiting, 2 years of silence, 2 years of being forgotten by the very man Joseph had begged to remember him. For Joseph, the prison walls became a daily reality, yet his faith did not crumble. Each sunrise reminded him that God still reigned, and each sunset taught him patience. But far above the prison, in the palace of Pharaoh, the mightiest ruler of Egypt, events were stirring that would change Joseph's life forever. One night, Pharaoh dreamed a dream, and behold, he stood by the river Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt. Out of the waters there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, grazing among the reeds. Then after them 7 other cows came up, gaunt and ugly, their ribs showing, their bodies wasted. The lean cows came near the fat ones and devoured them. Yet after devouring them, they remained as gaunt and ugly as before. Pharaoh awoke, his spirit troubled. He fell asleep again and dreamed a second dream. 7 ears of grain, plump and good, grew on a single stalk. After them sprouted 7 thin ears, scorched by the east wind. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump ears. Pharaoh awoke again, and behold, it was a dream. In the morning his spirit was restless. He sent for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men of his court. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them. Their wisdom, their incantations, their knowledge of signs and omens failed them. The meaning was hidden, and Pharaoh grew anxious, for he sensed the dreams were no ordinary visions. It was then that the chief cupbearer remembered. Shame burned within him as memory pierced his heart. He said to Pharaoh, "Today I remember my faults. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, both I and the chief baker, we each dreamed a dream the same night. And a young Hebrew was with us there, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us. And as he interpreted, so it came to pass. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged." Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph. From the darkness of prison he was hastily brought out. They shaved him, gave him clean garments of fine linen, and led him into the presence of Pharaoh. Joseph, once bound in chains, now stood before the most powerful ruler in the world. Pharaoh said to him, "I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph answered humbly, "It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace." Then Pharaoh recounted his dreams, the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean. cows, the 7 good ears and the 7 thin ears. When he had finished, all eyes turned to Joseph. Joseph spoke with calm certainty. The dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one. And the 7 lean, ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind are 7 years of famine. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout all the land of Egypt. But after them will arise 7 years of famine, and all the abundance will be forgotten. In the land of Egypt, the famine will consume the land, and the abundance will not be remembered because of the famine that follows, for it will be very grievous. The reason the dream was given twice is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint overseers to take the 5th part of the harvest during the 7 plentiful years. Let them gather all food of those good years and store grain under Pharaoh's hand to be kept in the cities. That food shall be for reserve against the 7 years of famine, so that the land may not perish. Pharaoh and all his servants were astonished. The magicians had failed, but this Hebrew slave spoke with authority, as though the voice of heaven was upon his lips. Pharaoh turned to his court. Can we find such a man as this, in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and according to your word shall all my people be ruled. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's hand. He clothed him in fine linen and placed a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the 2nd chariot, and men cried before him, Bow the knee! Thus Pharaoh set Joseph over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, meaning God speaks and lives. And he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, as his wife. Joseph, once a slave and prisoner, now stood as ruler of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered Pharaoh's service. He went out over all the land of Egypt, directing the collection of grain. In the 7 years of abundance, the earth yielded in heaps, and Joseph gathered grain like the sand of the sea until he ceased counting, for it was beyond measure. 2. Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came. He called the firstborn Manasseh, saying, For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. The second he named Ephraim, For God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. After the 7 years of plenty, the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had foretold. In all lands the famine was severe, but in Egypt there was bread. When the people cried to Pharaoh for food, he said, Go to Joseph, what he says to you, do. So the famine spread over all the face of the earth, but Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. From every land people came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, for the famine was severe in all the earth. Thus, by God's the boy who had once been sold into slavery became the savior of nations. The famine spread like a shadow across the earth. The once fertile fields withered, the rivers shrank, and the ground cracked beneath the scorching sun. Villages that had once echoed with laughter fell silent as hunger gnawed at every home. The famine was not only in Egypt, but in Canaan too, where Jacob and his sons dwelled. When Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, he called his sons together. Why do you look at one another, he said. Behold, I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy for us, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers set out for Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, for he feared harm might befall him. Thus The sons of Israel came among the multitude of foreigners seeking food from Egypt's stores. Meanwhile, Joseph, clothed in authority, governed the land. Day after day he sat upon the seat of power, dispensing grain to those who came. He was no longer the boy they had once mocked, nor the dreamer they had betrayed. He was now a man of wisdom and strength, his face framed by Egyptian garb, his speech seasoned by years in Pharaoh's court. When Joseph's brothers came before him, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground. The sight pierced Joseph's heart, for he remembered the dreams of his youth, how his brothers' sheaves bowed to his sheaf. The vision, once mocked, now stood fulfilled before his eyes. Yet Joseph did not reveal himself. Instead, he spoke, harshly disguising his voice. "Where do you come from?" he demanded through an interpreter. "From the land of Canaan," they answered, "to buy food." Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. He remembered the chains, the caravan of Ishmaelites. He remembered their scorn and betrayal. Yet he also saw their weary faces, lined by famine and age. His heart wrestled within him. "You are spies," Joseph accused. "You have come to see the nakedness of the land." "No, my lord," they protested. "Your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants are not spies." But Joseph pressed them. "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "We are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in Canaan. The youngest is with our father today, and one is no more." The word struck Joseph like an arrow. "One is no more." That was how they spoke of him, as if his life had ended. Joseph said, "It is as I told you. You are spies. By this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not leave unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you to bring your brother, and the rest of you shall be confined, that your words may be tested." So he put them all together in custody for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said, "Do this and live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined, but go and carry grain for the hunger of your households. Bring your youngest brother to me, so your words may be verified, and you shall not die." The brothers agreed, but their hearts were troubled. They said one to another, "We are truly guilty concerning our brother. We saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not hear. Therefore, this distress has come upon us." Reuben said, "Did I not tell you, do not sin against the boy? But you would not listen. Now his blood is required of us." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for he spoke to them through an interpreter. Hearing their words, Joseph turned away and wept. He composed himself, returned to them, and chose Simeon to remain bound before their eyes. Joseph then commanded that their sacks be filled with grain, that their money be returned secretly into each sack, and that provisions for the journey be given them. Thus the brothers departed. When they came to their lodging place on the way, one opened his sack to feed his donkey and found his money there. Their hearts sank, and they said to one another, "What is this that God has done to us?" They returned to Jacob in Canaan and told him all that had happened. They spoke of the harsh governor in Egypt who accused them of spying, of Simeon being held, and of the demand to bring Benjamin. As they emptied their sacks, each found his money returned, and they were afraid. Jacob said, "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and you would take Benjamin. All these things are against me." Reuben said to his father, "Kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Deliver him into my hand, and I will restore him to you." But Jacob refused. "My son shall not go down with you. His brother is dead, and he alone is left. If mischief befalls him on the journey, you will bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave." So time passed, and the famine grew worse. When they had eaten the grain they had brought from Egypt, Jacob said, "Go again and buy us a little food." But Judah spoke firmly. "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" If you will send our brother with us, we will go. But if you will not send him, we will not go down." Israel said, "Why did you deal so badly with me as to tell the man that you had another brother?" They answered, "The man asked us plainly about our family. Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?" We answered his questions. How could we know he would say, "Bring your brother down"? Then Judah said, "Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die. I will be surety for him. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back, then let me bear the blame forever." Their father Israel relented. "If it must be so, do this. Take some of the best fruits of the land in your vessels, a little balm, a little honey, spices, myrrh, pistachios, and almonds, and take double money, for perhaps it was a mistake. Take also your brother, and arise, return to the man, and may God Almighty give you mercy before him, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved." Thus the brothers prepared, taking Benjamin and gifts, and went down again to Egypt, their hearts heavy with fear, yet driven by hunger and hope. When Joseph saw his brothers returning to Egypt, Benjamin among them, his heart trembled within him. Years had passed since he had last seen the face of his full brother, Rachel's youngest son, and now here Benjamin stood before him, a grown man, no longer the child Joseph remembered. His brothers bowed low before him again, fulfilling once more the dreams Joseph had dreamed as a youth. Yet Joseph did not reveal himself. He would test them to see if their hearts had changed since the day they sold him into slavery. Upon seeing Benjamin, Joseph spoke to the steward of his house. "Bring the men into my home, slaughter an animal and make ready, for they shall dine with me at noon." The brothers were afraid when they were brought into Joseph's house. They said to one another, "It is because of the money returned in our sacks the first time. He seeks occasion against us to fall upon us and to make us slaves." So they approached Joseph's steward and said, "O sir, we came indeed the first time to buy food, and when we opened our sacks at our lodging place, we found every man's money in the mouth of his sack. We have brought it back in our hand, and we have also brought additional money to buy more food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." The steward replied, "Peace be to you. Do not fear. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. The men were relieved, and when they were brought into Joseph's house, they prepared their gifts for him, for they heard they would eat bread there. At noon, Joseph came home, and they brought the present they had prepared, and bowed themselves before him to the earth. He asked them of their welfare, and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They answered, "Your servant our father is in good health, he is still alive." And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. When Joseph lifted his eyes and saw Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me?" And he said to Benjamin, "God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph's heart grew warm with compassion, and he hurried out, for he sought a place to weep. He entered his chamber and wept there. Afterward, he washed his face, controlled himself, and returned, saying, "Serve the food." They set a place for him by himself, for the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, and another for the brothers. They sat before him, the eldest according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men marveled at one another. Portions were taken from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. But Joseph was not finished testing them. He commanded his steward, "Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in the mouth of his sack, and put my silver cup, the cup of divination, in the sack of the youngest, with his grain money." The steward did as Joseph had spoken. At morning light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. When they had gone out of the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Up, follow after the men, When you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you rewarded evil for good? Is not this the cup from which my Lord drinks? You have done evil in doing this.' The steward overtook them and spoke these words. The brothers were astonished. They said, 'Why does my Lord say such words? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we found in our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then should we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servants the cup is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves.' The steward replied, 'Let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be blameless.' They quickly unloaded their sacks, and the search began, from the eldest to the youngest. At last the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. The brothers tore their clothes in anguish, loaded their donkeys, and returned to the city. Joseph was still in his house when Judah and his brothers came and fell before him on the ground. Joseph said, 'What deed is this that you have done? Did you not know that such a man as I can indeed practice divination?' Judah answered, 'What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? How shall we clear ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and he also with whom the cup is found.' But Joseph said, 'Far be it from me to do so. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father.' Then Judah drew near to Joseph and spoke with passion, 'O my Lord, let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant. My Lord asked his servants, Have you a father or a brother? And we said, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his father loves him. You said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes upon him. We said to my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave, his father would die. You said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, our father, we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, Go again and buy us a little food. We said, We cannot go down unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said, You know my wife bore me 2 sons. One went out from me, and I said, Surely he is torn in pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you will bring my gray hairs down with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, when he sees that the lad is not with us, he will die. So your servants shall bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back, then I will bear the blame before my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant remain, instead of the lad as a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me, lest I see the evil that shall come upon my father? Judah's words rang with sincerity and sacrifice. The brothers who had once abandoned Joseph now showed a willingness to give themselves for Benjamin's sake. The test was complete. Joseph saw their repentance and their love for their father. His heart broke with compassion, and the time was near when he could no longer hide his identity. Joseph could no longer restrain himself before all who stood by him. The burden of secrecy pressed upon his soul like a weight too heavy to carry. He had tested his brothers, he had seen their hearts transformed, and now compassion overcame the disguise. His eyes filled with tears, and his voice trembled. "Cause every man to go out from me," he commanded. And so no one remained with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. Then his weeping broke forth, loud and unrestrained, so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh was told. Joseph cried with a voice that carried both pain and relief, years of hidden sorrow mingling with joy. He said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Their hearts pounded, their minds reeled, for the mighty ruler before them, the one they had feared, the one they had bowed to in trembling, was the brother they had betrayed, sold, and thought lost forever. Joseph said to them, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near, and he said, "I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore do not be grieved nor angry with yourselves, that you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years has the famine been in the land, and there are yet 5 years in which there shall be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve you a remnant in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So it was not you that sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." The brothers listened, stunned, tears filling their eyes. The guilt of long years weighed on them, yet Joseph's words were not of vengeance, but of grace. "Hasten," Joseph continued, "go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me, you and your children, and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. And there I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. Tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and hurry to bring my father down here." Then Joseph fell upon Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them, and after that his brothers talked with him. The news soon reached Pharaoh's house. "Joseph's brothers have come." It pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, 'Do this, load your animals and depart. Go to the land of Canaan and take your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land.' Now you are commanded, do this. Take wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives. And bring your father and come. Also do not regard your possessions, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours." Joseph gave his brothers wagons according to Pharaoh's command, and provisions for the way. To each man he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. To his father he sent 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. He said to them, "See that you do not fall out by the way." The brothers journeyed back to Canaan, their hearts overwhelmed by what had transpired. How would they tell their aged father? Could such marvelous news be believed? They came to Jacob and told him, "Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt." Jacob's heart fainted, for he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob revived. Israel said, "It is enough. Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die." Thus the family of Israel prepared for a great journey. The Lord had woven together sorrow and joy, betrayal and forgiveness, famine and provision. What men had meant for evil, God had turned to good. And in the land of Egypt, a family would be reunited, and the promises of God would move forward toward their fulfillment. When Jacob heard the words of his sons, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Israel revived. He said, "It is enough. Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die, and I will dwell in the land of Egypt." Jacob prepared for the journey. He gathered his household, his sons and their wives, his children, his flocks, and all that he possessed. Every sheep, every goat, every ox and donkey, even the smallest of his possessions, was to be taken. He loaded them upon the wagons sent by Joseph and began the long journey from Canaan to Egypt, a distance filled with deserts, hills, and rivers. The journey was not easy. The sun blazed upon them, scorching the earth and parching their lips. At night, the desert wind chilled them to the bone, yet they traveled with hope, their hearts buoyed by the thought of seeing Joseph alive. Each day, Jacob prayed for guidance and protection. O Lord, make straight our path, that we may see the face of Joseph and dwell safely in the land of Egypt. Along the way, the sons of Israel marveled at the wagons Joseph had sent. These were not ordinary vehicles. They were richly adorned, strong and swift, capable of carrying both people and livestock. Joseph, mindful of his father's frailty, had spared no expense to ensure their comfort and safety. When they approached Egypt, the Nile came into view, its waters winding like a silver ribbon through the fertile land. The fields of Egypt were green, the granaries full, and the cities bustling with life. Yet amidst this prosperity, Jacob's heart pounded with anticipation. Would Joseph still recognize his father? Would their reunion be as joyous as their hearts imagined? At last, they reached the land of Goshen, the region appointed by Pharaoh for his family. As they entered, Joseph rode out to meet them. He fell upon his father's neck and wept for a long time, tears mingling with joy, sorrow, and relief. Jacob said to Joseph, "Now I can die, for I have seen your face and know that you live." Joseph then embraced each of his brothers and wept upon them. The reunion was full of tears, laughter, and the exchange of long-suppressed emotions. He inquired of their journey, their health, and their struggles during the famine. He comforted them, saying, "Do not fear, for God has made me lord over all Egypt. Come and dwell here, eat of the fat of the land, and be safe." Pharaoh himself, having heard of Joseph's family, came out to meet them. He spoke kindly to Jacob, saying, "How many are the days of the years of your life?" Jacob answered, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and evil have been the years of my life, and they have not reached the days of the life of my fathers, in the days of their pilgrimage." Pharaoh blessed Jacob and provided for his household. He gave them the best of the land of Egypt, that they might dwell in safety, tending their flocks and herds without fear or want. The land of Goshen became their home, a place where they could live and prosper, even in the midst of famine affecting other lands. Joseph ensured that his brothers and father lacked nothing. He provided them with abundant grain, clothing, and supplies. He instructed his household and officials to treat the family of Israel with respect, giving them land and resources. The bonds of love, once torn by betrayal, were now restored. Jacob's heart overflowed with gratitude. He blessed Joseph, acknowledging that the Lord had guided all things. "God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction," Jacob said. He recounted the journey, the famine, and the providence that had preserved them. The entire family celebrated, for God's hand had turned sorrow into joy, betrayal into reconciliation, and famine into abundance. Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, were presented before Jacob, who blessed them as his own. He said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads." He laid his hands upon them, crossing his hands so that the younger, Ephraim, received the blessing of the firstborn, foreshadowing God's plans for the tribes of Israel. The reunion of Joseph and Jacob was a time of reflection on God's providence. Joseph reminded his brothers, "Do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. It was God who sent me before you to preserve life." They marveled at the way God had turned their evil intentions into a means of salvation. Years passed, and the family of Israel multiplied in the land of Goshen. They thrived under Joseph's protection and wisdom. Joseph's influence grew, yet he remained humble, attributing all glory to God. The famine continued across surrounding nations. Yet in Egypt, Jacob's family lacked nothing. Jacob grew old, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. He recounted the stories of his youth, of God's promises, and of the faithfulness that had carried him through trials. He blessed each of his sons, speaking prophetically of the nations that would arise from their lineages. The blessings were full of wisdom, foresight, and divine instruction, as Jacob discerned the hand of God in the destiny of Israel. Thus, the migration of Jacob to Egypt was not merely a physical journey, but a journey of faith. From the valleys of Canaan to the fertile plains of Goshen, the family of Israel experienced God's providence in miraculous ways. The sins and failings of the past were reconciled through repentance, forgiveness, and God's eternal plan. Years passed in the land of Goshen, and Jacob's age grew. His body weakened, but his spirit remained strong. He called his sons to his bedside, saying, "Gather near, that I may bless you before I die. Remember all that God has done for us, from the time he called Abraham to this day, guiding our steps and fulfilling his promises." One by one, Jacob called each son, speaking prophetically over them, revealing the destiny of their families, the tribes that would bear their names. Reuben, the firstborn, received a gentle rebuke for instability. Simeon and Levi were spoken of for their zeal and anger. Judah was praised for his leadership and the scepter that would not depart from his line. Joseph received double blessing through his sons Manasseh and Ephraim, the younger receiving the firstborn's portion, as Jacob discerned God's plan for Israel. Benjamin, the youngest, was blessed for his courage and strength, and the other sons received words of counsel, prophecy, and hope. Jacob exhorted them to remain faithful to God, to uphold justice, and to cherish their family unity. After blessing his sons, Jacob called for his sons Joseph and said, "I am about to die. Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Machpelah, which Abraham bought. Do not bury me in Egypt. Carry me back to the land of Canaan, as God promised our fathers." Joseph promised, "I will do as you command. I will carry you back to the land of your fathers." Soon after, Jacob gave up the spirit and died, his family mourning deeply. Joseph commanded the Egyptians to embalm his father, as was the custom, and a great mourning took place for 70 days. Then Joseph, with his brothers and many Egyptians, journeyed to Canaan. They carried Jacob to the cave of Machpelah and buried him beside Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, and Leah, fulfilling his wish. After returning to Egypt, Joseph's life continued. The years of famine persisted, but under his management, Egypt prospered. Joseph's brothers, though once fearful of his wrath, now found favor and protection. They feared not, for Joseph forgave them fully, repeating, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to save many people alive." Joseph lived to see his grandchildren, instructing them in the ways of the Lord, and recounting the stories of his youth, his trials, and God's providence. He remained a man of humility, wisdom, and deep faith, guiding Egypt through times of plenty and famine, always attributing his success to God. When Joseph grew old, he knew that his time on earth was near its end. He called for his brothers and reminded them of God's promise that he would bring them out of Egypt to the land promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Joseph said, "God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from this land." Joseph died at the age of 110, having lived a life marked by suffering, wisdom, faith, and forgiveness. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. His legacy endured through his family, the tribes of Israel, and the generations that followed, a testimony to God's providence, mercy, and the power to turn adversity into blessing. Joseph's story became a beacon of hope. Even in betrayal, imprisonment, and famine, God's plan unfolds, bringing salvation, reconciliation, and the fulfillment of promises beyond what men could see. Thank you for joining this incredible journey through the life of Joseph, from betrayal and slavery to forgiveness and leadership. His story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, God's plan is at work, turning trials into triumphs and sorrow into hope. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and like the video so you won't miss the next part of our Bible series. Share this video with friends and family, and let Joseph's story inspire faith, patience, and courage in your life. Remember, every challenge can become a blessing, and every hardship can reveal God's providence.